They laughed at me while I washed dishes at their dinner party. What they didn't know was that I'd just rejected a $12 million offer for my startup. 3 of my uncles were sitting in that fancy living room, sipping whiskey like kings, while I stood in the kitchen, scrubbing their plates. My cousin Jake even walked in and whispered, "Man, I can't believe you're still doing this loser stuff." And my own mother said, loud enough for everyone to hear, "Some kids just never turn out the way you hope." Don't forget to like, share, and subscribe if this story hits you hard. You're about to witness a crazy twist you won't see coming. I bit my tongue. Again, I always did. Because what they didn't know was that I'd spent the last 6 years building something in silence. No loans, no outside help. Just sleepless nights, cold dinners, and rejection emails that could fill a novel. I kept it hidden because they never believed in me. Never once. At 16, when I said I wanted to start my own business, my dad called me delusional. At 19, when I dropped out of college, my aunt told everyone at church that I was wasting my life. By 21, I was working minimum wage jobs, coding at night, skipping meals to pay rent, while they posted vacation photos and mocked me in family group chats I wasn't even part of. And yet, that night, as I cleared Jake's leftover steak off, his plate, my phone buzzed, one message, one line, "Your feature is live. Forbes just published it." I froze. My heart was racing, but I didn't say a word, because I had a plan. Tomorrow was Grandpa's 80th birthday. The entire family would be there, and they had no idea the cake I was about to serve wasn't the only surprise coming. The hall was packed. Gold balloons, live jazz, and everyone dressed like they were auditioning for a TV show. Grandpa sat in his velvet chair like a king, smiling, while the rest of the family took turns giving fake speeches about unity and hard work, all while still whispering behind each other's backs. I stayed quiet in the corner, just like always. Jake gave me a smug look when he saw me still wearing the same plain shirt. "Man, you really showed up dressed like that." He laughed, loud enough for others to hear. His fiancée chuckled too. "Isn't he the one who still lives in that tiny apartment downtown?" My aunt, who hadn't texted me in years, came over with her classic fake smile. "Sweetheart, it's never too late to go back to school. Get a degree, find something stable." I just nodded, because the moment wasn't right yet. But it was coming. Then the speeches began. Everyone suddenly became saints. Jake bragged about closing his first 6-figure deal. My Uncle Joe told the room how he built everything from scratch, completely ignoring the fact that Grandpa had handed him a business on a silver platter. Then Grandpa asked, "Anyone else want to say a few words?" Silence. Jake smirked at me. "Why don't you say something, bro? Maybe tell us how many dishes you washed last night." People laughed, so I stood up. Not for revenge, but because the time had come. I walked to the center, pulled my phone out, and said just one line. "Before I speak, can someone please explain why our family group chat is sharing my Forbes article and tagging me in it like they always believed?" The room froze. Grandpa squinted. "Forbes?" I tapped the screen and flipped it toward the projector. In 10 seconds, the massive screen on the wall lit up with my face on the front page. From dishwasher to millionaire, the silent rise of David Walker, gasps. My mom dropped her champagne. Aunt Lily's mouth actually fell open. Jake's fiancée looked at him like he was the loser now. But I wasn't done. Not even close. Because the real shock was still in my pocket, and it had Grandpa's name on it. Gasps turned into silence. And that silence? It was louder than any insult they'd ever thrown at me. Everyone was frozen, eyes locked on the screen where my Forbes feature glowed like a spotlight, not just on my success, but on their failure to see me. I looked around the room slowly, making sure every one of them felt it. The same family that called me lazy, delusional, and wasting potential was now standing speechless, trying to make sense of what was happening. My Aunt Lily stuttered first. Is this real? Jake broke the silence with a nervous laugh, trying to play it cool. Okay, wait. Is this some kind of prank? Like Photoshop or something? I smiled. Actually, Jake, Forbes doesn't usually run Photoshop pranks, but I get it. I'd be shocked too if the guy you laughed at for years just landed a $20 million valuation on a startup he built in his bedroom. That hit like a punch. A few of the cousins who used to ignore me were suddenly interested. One of them even stepped closer and said, "Dude, wait, so what exactly do you do?" I ignored the question. I wasn't here for a Q&A session. I was here for a reveal, and it hadn't even begun yet. I turned toward Grandpa. His hands were shaking a little, not because he was upset, but because he was realizing something. I had become the one thing he never thought I'd be: independent, powerful, respected. I walked up to him, pulled a small envelope from my pocket and handed it to him gently. "This is for you," I said. He opened it slowly. Inside was a printed deed and a signed agreement. His eyes scanned the page, eyebrows furrowed. Then, he looked up at me with a mix of confusion and awe. "You bought my building?" I nodded. "Not just the building, the whole block, the stores, the rentals, everything. I've been buying it piece by piece for the last 2 years, quietly, through different LLCs." My mom gasped. My uncle almost dropped his drink. I kept going. And I didn't stop there. Remember Walker Textiles? The factory Dad used to run before the family sold it to pay off Cousin Derek's gambling debts? Grandpa nodded slowly. I bought that too. Reopened it. Hired a full staff. Tripled production. We're now the top supplier for 5 national brands. Now people weren't just shocked. They were scared. The kid they thought would never be more than a waiter was now the owner of everything they once controlled. But I wasn't done. I also rewrote the family trust, I added, holding up another envelope. "Grandpa, I know you wanted to pass on the estate to someone who would protect the legacy, and after seeing how this family turned on each other over money, how they laughed at failure but never helped, I took legal steps to make sure it ends with me." My Uncle Joe stood up, red-faced. "What the hell are you talking about? You can't just—" "I can," I interrupted, "because Grandpa co-signed the document 6 months ago, before the article, before the noise. When I came to him quietly and told him what I was building, he believed in me. Privately. And now, it's all legally binding." The room exploded into whispers, gasps, panicked glances. Jake looked like he was about to throw up. But Grandpa, he smiled. He stood up slowly, walked over to me, and did something he hadn't done since I was a kid. He hugged me. Then he looked around the room and said, this young man, built more alone than any of you ever did together." Didn't say anything back. I didn't need to. Because in that moment, they all knew. The kid who was mocked, laughed at, dismissed, was now the one holding the keys to everything they wanted. And still, the biggest twist hadn't dropped yet, because what I did next would leave the entire room in ruins. Grandpa's words echoed through the hall like thunder, shaking every fake smile off their faces. But I wasn't finished. As the applause awkwardly faded, half of them clapping because they were confused, the other half because they were scared, I stepped back toward the mic and took a deep breath. "I wasn't planning to speak today," I said slowly. "But since we're all being honest, there's one more thing I need to say." I reached into my jacket pocket and pulled out a thick folder. It wasn't just any folder. It was evidence. "Over the last 6 months," I continued, I've Been reviewing every past family investment, every deal that went through Grandpa's name. Because as it turns out, a lot of what went missing wasn't lost. It was stolen. Now you could feel the air leave the room. Eyes widened. Bodies stiffened. My Uncle Joe looked like he'd seen a ghost. I flipped the folder open and pulled out one page. This is a bank transfer made in 2016. Grandpa's retirement account. $150,000 disappeared overnight. The bank flagged it as suspicious, but no one followed up. You know why? I looked dead at Joe. Because the account that received it was registered to your daughter. Joe's face went white. What the hell are you saying? I'm saying your little beach house in Florida wasn't paid for with consulting money. It was paid for with Grandpa's savings. You forged the documents, and then you pressured him into thinking he just forgot about it. But he didn't. He told me everything. Gasps again. But this time it wasn't admiration. It was fear. And it's not just Joe. Aunt Lily? I turned my eyes toward her. You convinced Grandpa to co-sign your second mortgage, then defaulted on it and let it roll into his debt. I've paid it off quietly, but don't think I forgot. Because every one of you sitting here who pretended to be family while stealing behind his back. Your time is up. Lily stood up, flustered. You don't get to stand there and accuse us. You think just because you made some money. No, I cut her off. I get to stand here because I built something. Real while the rest of you spent your lives playing pretend. The folder slammed shut in my hand. And that's when I dropped the final blow. I'm taking Grandpa with me, I said. He's moving in with me next week. I've hired full-time care for him, a private chef, and a team of lawyers to revise the entire family estate. Gasps turned to shouting, but I didn't flinch. From this point forward, I continued, no one here has access to the Walker family fortune. No more vacation funds, no more bailouts, no more trust payments for your failed businesses or luxury cars. Jake yelled across the room. You're cutting off your own blood? I turned to him with a cold stare. You cut yourself off years ago when you laughed at me for struggling, when you turned your back instead of helping, when you mocked my failure but never once celebrated my wins. Then I walked toward Grandpa, who had tears in his eyes now, not from sadness, but from relief. And right before I led him out of the hall, I turned back one last time and said, oh, and one last thing, remember that app you all said would never work? The one I built in my bedroom with no money? They stared silently. It just got acquired by Amazon. Deal closed this morning. $32.5 million, and Aunt Lily actually dropped her glass. Jake sat down like his knees gave out. Joe just kept shaking his head in denial, and I walked out of that hall without saying another word. No goodbyes, no hugs, no explanations, because they didn't deserve a piece of my story. They were just the background, noise in a life I built from nothing. But just when I thought it was over, a voicemail popped up on my phone from a name I never expected. My father, the man who abandoned me when I was 14, and what he said in that message flipped everything upside down. I stared at the name glowing on my phone screen. Dad. Voicemail. My hand froze. I hadn't spoken to him in 16 years. He left when I was 14. No warning, no goodbye. Just a note on the fridge that said, I can't do this anymore. Back then, I thought it was my fault. Thought maybe if I'd been smarter, quieter, better, he would have stayed. But eventually I realized he didn't leave because I was weak. He left because he was. And now, out of nowhere, he wanted to talk? I pressed play. Hey, it's me. I saw the Forbes article. Hard to miss it, actually. Look, I know I don't deserve to call, but I need to tell you something. Something I should have told you years ago. Please, call me back. For a second I wanted to ignore it. Just delete it and move on. But something in his voice. It wasn't guilt. It was fear. I called him. The phone rang once. Twice. Then, click. Hello? His voice was weak. Older than I remembered. And shaking. It's me, I said. You said you had something to tell me. There was silence on the line. Then a shaky breath. You were never supposed to be left behind, he whispered. They told me to disappear. I frowned. What are you talking about? Your uncles, he said slowly. Joe, Robert, even Lily. They made a deal with me. Said if I walked away from the family, they'd pay off my debts. Your mom didn't know. I thought I was protecting you. But I didn't realize I was just making you vulnerable. I couldn't believe what I was hearing. Wait, you're saying they forced you out? They blackmailed me, he said. Back then, I was drowning in medical debt, and I didn't have the money. They said they'd cover it, if I left, if I made it look like I abandoned you. I thought you'd grow up surrounded by family, not realizing they were the ones planning to wipe you out. My stomach turned. All these years, I thought he ran. But the truth was even uglier. They kept you weak, he continued. They mocked you, shamed you, made you feel like nothing, because they were terrified of what you might become if you knew the truth. And now? I asked. He sighed. Now they're calling me too, begging me to reach out, trying to use me to get to you. A part of me wanted to scream. The other part? It smiled. Thanks for telling me, I said quietly. But it's too late. I've already removed them from everything. They can't touch $1, and soon they won't even have the family name. What do you mean? I'm buying the Walker trademark, I said. I'm rebranding everything under a new legacy. One built on effort, loyalty, grit, everything. They tried to bury. Silence again. Then, I'm proud of you, he whispered. More than you'll ever know. I hung up without another word. Not out of anger, but because I didn't need his validation. Not anymore. The next morning, I woke up to chaos. My story was trending globally. Hashtags, news articles, videos, people from all over the world sharing their stories of betrayal, revenge, and silent hustle. I wasn't just in Forbes anymore, was the headline. And then came the final strike. I hosted a press conference in front of Walker Textiles, not just to announce the expansion, but to officially unveil the new name of the family empire. Behind me, a giant black curtain dropped, and there it was. Rebuilt, bold, gold letters, no family name, no inherited guilt. Just a single word that told my story. I walked up to the mic and said, "This brand doesn't belong to a bloodline. It belongs to the broken, the overlooked, the underestimated. It's for every person who got laughed at in silence, who was told they'd never make it, and who used that pain to build power." The crowd roared. Somewhere in the back, I saw Grandpa in a wheelchair, clapping with tears in his eyes. And next to him, my mom, smiling, proud, free. And as the cameras flashed, as the world watched, the boy they once called a failure became the man who rewrote his legacy, from forgotten to Forbes, from mocked to millionaire, from abandoned to unstoppable. And that was only the beginning.